All right, thank you very much, JJ. You know, we were talking last week about folks who can actually increase their muscle while losing weight. Well, we got a question from a viewer, so we had to bring in UAB nutritionist Dr. Beth Kitchen to talk about this morning in our normal segment. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you too, Mike.
So the viewer asked me, he said, what if you increase your muscle, right? And that puts you in a higher BMI, Body Mass Index. Thank you, Body Mass Index.
Just say BMI.
So you gain a lot of muscle mass, and then it puts you in the overweight or obese category because you have more weight because you got the muscles.
This was such a good question, and it brings up one of the weaknesses of using body mass index to tell us about our health.
Okay.
So let's talk about what body mass index is first. All it is a weight for height formula that puts your weight for height into one number. You'll hear a lot of people and even websites say, oh, it measures body fat. BMI does not measure body fat. It's just weight for height. Now, it correlates with body fat for most of us. As our weight goes up, body fat's going to go up, but it's not a direct measure. And so you run into exactly that problem that the viewer talked about. What if your BMI is 26, 27, 28? That's overweight by definition, but if it's muscle mass, then you're not unhealthy, because what we really care about is lean to fat. Weight for height doesn't measure that. And I have a graphic for you that I think they're going to show for us that I actually use with my students to really demonstrate this, where you can have two people. It's actually this is the graphics that's showing you the height for weight. That's the one I really wanted, and it's my fault for giving them the other one first. So you can see these two guys, these two cartoon guys, have the same BMI of 33.9, which would actually be considered obese, but you would not look at the guy on the left and say he's unhealthy. He's really muscular. The guy on the right, you can tell, has a lot of fat mass. And so this is one of the biggest problems. And that previous graphic, what that showed you, is where you can go to calculate your BMI, and then it shows you the categories. Thanks, guys, for following along with me with that. So you can see the categories that are considered overweight and obese. And a lot of researchers, a lot of us in healthcare kind of don't like these numbers because of that. And we don't really, they're not useless, but we sort of overuse BMI.
Well, because one thing you were talking about earlier, but before we came on camera, is that it's different though for different ethnic groups, right?
Yes. So. And you know, the thing is, we use one BMI for all the different ethnic groups and for men and women. And it may not apply similarly. For instance, I mean, think about why we're using BMI. We use it to predict how likely are you to get chronic diseases and be unhealthy and die, essentially. Well, different numbers may apply differently to ethnic groups. We know, for instance, that African Americans at a little higher BMI than Caucasians can actually be pretty healthy. So they may need a different set of numbers. We know that Asians, that their BMIs probably need to be a little bit lower, that they start seeing the onset of chronic diseases at lower BMI. So we're using this as a one-size-fits-all number, and it really doesn't apply. So you have to keep BMI in perspective.
So it's a decent measuring stick, just not the end-all be-all.
Exactly. It's not useless, but you've got to keep it in perspective and look at other things in there.
Well, that makes me feel a bit better, although it gives me an excuse to say, yeah, I'm gaining weight, but it's all muscle weight.
Muscle. And muscle's hard to measure. You know, people say, why do we use BMI? Why don't we measure muscle? It's a much more complicated measurement.
Gotcha. All right, thank you, Dr. Beth.